Hi, Ashley Campter here again. In my previous video, I created the piano sketch to a new section of a track for the Game Boy game The Curse of the Mantle by Asatiir's Tales. As before, the link is in the description below if you haven't seen their channel from the previous video. In today's video, we're going to take that same piano sketch, put it into GB Studio, and score it like it's the early 90s. You're going to get an overview of what GB Studio is, how it represents music data, what a tracker is, and how to input notes into GB Studio. Let's go. Before we go into GB Studio, here's a quick recap of the section that I scored in the previous video, in case you haven't seen it and want to hear the music I'll be working with today. I've printed out the score so that I can refer to it as we work in GB Studio, so let's go there right now. GB Studio allows you to create full games in its game engine, so it has many tools available for organizing your game world, loading in your sprites and backgrounds, programming your music and sound effects, as well as building and running your game, among other things. But the section we will be most concerned with today is the music section. Music data in GB Studio is represented in one of two ways. It can either be represented horizontally as a piano roll view, which some of you may be familiar with if you are using other music software such as digital audio workstations or DAWs. And the other way GB Studio represents music data is in a tracker format in which the music scrolls vertically instead. Tracker music is famous for having a fast workflow that is driven purely by the computer keyboard and not a mouse. And many people who continue to write tracker music today will cite this as one of the major advantages of tracker software. I am quite familiar with trackers myself, so I will be using the tracker interface to input the score data from the music that I've composed. GB Studio works with patterns, which are repeatable blocks of music. Each pattern is referred to with a number, and you can see that each of these numbers here is different. So for each numbered section, a different section of music will play. If I were to take one of these song order units and put the same numbered pattern as a previous song order, say for example, if I took song order number 5 and put pattern number 0 into it, then whatever music was programmed in pattern number 0 would also play halfway through the song. This makes it very efficient to reuse sections of music without using any extra memory, and this is why tracker music was very efficient for games, especially in the Amiga era and up until sort of the mid-90s with Epic Games. They did a lot of tracker music for games such as Jazz Jackrabbit, Unreal Tournament, and even up until the early 2000s, tracker music was being used in a lot of game engines. So it has stood the test of time as a viable game music format. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a new song order to this song, and you'll see it's popped up here at the end with a new pattern number. So GB Studio will expect me to write a new section of music, and because this pattern has the number 8, this music will not be repeated anywhere else in the piece, which is what we want because I'm about to write a new section of music instead of reusing something that I've already written. You can pick any one of 16 different instruments for each of your channels here. The Duty 1 and Duty 2 channels, the square wave channels in other words, share the same instruments because they use the same sort of synthesizer. The wavetable channel has different instruments but still has 16 of them, and the noise channel has 16 instruments that are also different because the synthesizer engine is different. And as I said in the previous video, the noise channel is usually used for percussion. So if we look over here at the instrument list, you will see all the different instruments listed here, which include various types of percussion as well as some sound effects. The rest of the melodic channels contain instrument sounds that have varying lengths and perhaps some effects like pitch sweeping. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and input the first few bars of this new section of music. I don't know what instrument I'm going to use, so I'm just going to pick one and see how it sounds. I'm going to use the computer keyboard to input my notes, and you can choose how high or low your notes are by using the octave control next to the instrument control. So I'm going to see what kind of sound that creates. And that's a bit too low for my melody notes, so I'm going to move it up a bit. Okay, that's too high. So we will be needing something in the middle. So that sounds about right. In fact, I'm not sure if this instrument is going to work, but what I will do is input this music anyway and figure that out later after I've input as much as I can into one pattern. So I'm going to use the computer keyboard keys on the left-hand side of the keyboard, your typing keyboard, to input my notes, and I'm going to use the arrow keys to move up and down so that I can input different notes at different times to create the music. I've managed to input 4 bars of music. I'm now going to go and do the same thing with all the other channels. Just like I've done with my melody line, I'm going to do that with my harmony line as well as my bass line. The harmony line will be in the duty 2 channel and my bass line will be in the wave channel. I won't be using the noise channel for this composition. I'm going to pick a different instrument now and input the harmony line into the duty 2 channel, and then we'll see how it sounds. Okay, that's the duty 2 channel done, and now we'll enter our bass line. I used instrument number 1 here, so let me see whether I can change my instrument here as well. Maybe I'll stick with the original instrument that I used for my bass line, because that will increase the consistency between the different sections of music. I'm already changing the instruments in the other 2 channels, so perhaps it will sound good without me changing the instrument here, who knows? Okay, so everything is in. Let's have a listen to how this will sound. Of course, I need to save first so that my work doesn't go anywhere. That sounds okay. It sounds a bit bare, but there are a few things that I've done in the previous sections of the song that we still need to do in this section. But we will get to that once we've input the rest of the music. But it's not sounding bad at the moment. After we've got all the music input for the rest of the parts of this section, I'm then going to go through and add in the effects so that the music has more richness and depth to it. Because right now it sounds a bit plain, but it does give you a feeling for how the music will actually sound once we are done with the whole process. So I'll go right ahead and input the rest of the music now. Okay, so that's all the music input. It's only 2 patterns. Each pattern holds 4 bars of music, and I wrote 8 bars of music. So let's see how it sounds and if I wrote any wrong notes which I need to correct. So what I did in previous sections of the song is I had notes that were played at full volume, and then I had the same note with the same instrument played with an effect. And if you look on the right hand side of the screen, you'll see what the effect is. This particular effect indicated with a C, stands for the set volume command. And you can see the number here corresponds to the number of the volume that I'm setting this instrument to. So what I'm doing here, by putting a copy of this instrument later on, after it's played a note, with a change in volume, is I'm creating an echo. This is a very common technique for adding depth and richness to chiptune music. A lot of composers would find out these sorts of tricks and employ them. So what I'm going to do with this new section is I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take these notes and I'm going to put echoes in for everything except for duty 2, because we don't have any room to put echoes in with all these notes already taking up space. So now I've put in the echoes into the duty 1 channel, our melody, and when I play it back, you should hear a noticeable difference in richness and depth in the melody compared to the rest of the channels. Hopefully you heard the difference there. It was quite noticeable. And what we're going to do is do the same thing for the wave channel, which is our bass line. So hopefully the echoes in both channels will add as much richness as we need in this section, because we can't put anything in between these notes in the duty 2 channel. Okay, so all the music has now been input from the sheet music that I printed out. Let's have a listen to the new section as it was intended to sound. So it sounds good. It sounds good with the echoes. I may still change the instruments around. I may change duty 1 to instrument 10 and duty 2 to instrument 9, but as it stands, this is pretty much how the section is going to sound. Let me try and quickly switch those instruments around, and then we'll have a listen to the section with those instruments swapped over. Okay, so all the instruments have been swapped over. Let's see how that sounds. That sounds much better. That's exactly how I wanted it to sound. The previous version felt a bit like it was not quite as smooth when going back into the beginning of the piece, but now that I've swapped the instruments around, the transition into the first section of the piece, the transition into the loop, is a lot smoother just from having the instruments sound slightly more similar to each other, but not being exactly the same instrument. The last thing I want to do is edit instrument number 9 to take it down by 50% so it's not quite as in your face, because it's supposed to be a harmony part. So this should hopefully make the inner line disappear a bit and the melody should be more up front now. Let's have one more listen. And I just realized I changed the wrong instrument. I was changing the instrument in the wave channel, but I was not changing the instrument in the duty 2 channel. So let me actually select the correct instrument and see if I can change the volume here. So we'll change the initial volume from 11. Let's take it down to about 5. Let's see how that sounds. Bit too quiet. Let's raise it a bit. I'm liking that. I'm actually liking a volume of 8 there on the duty 2 channel. So that's everything in this piece. Let's have a full listen to how everything sounds from the beginning, maybe even including a loop. So that's it for now on my process of how I score for the game The Curse of the Mantle. Even though this was just one section of music, the process holds for an entire piece of music as well. If you liked this video, please do leave a like and comment below about what you liked, and even share it with somebody who likes Game Boy music. If you want to see future content like this on this channel, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.